So some more Kingdom Hearts 3 news came out this week, aside from the amazing Toy Story trailer and a release date of exactly 2018, because that's a year, 365 days. Anyway, I almost named a Kingdom Hearts game there. But Tetsuya Nomura had looks like an interview at Disney's D23 Expo. And he had a bit of explaining to do. He had some explaining to do over, hey man, why in the world has it taken 12 years for another numbered Kingdom Hearts game to come to consoles? And I kind of want to go, I don't want to do my normal thing where I go through the whole interview and then kind of dissect it. I want to go through this bit by bit. Because it starts out one way and completely goes cop out by the end. So here's Nomura's quotes. A lot of people have been mentioning and making it sound like, oh, Nomura's taking too much time, and it hurts. Well, that's how criticism is. I'm sorry, dude.
Same thing happened when Final Fantasy 15 came out.
Yeah, and they actually had to take him off the project to get it to come out because he was taking too long. Like, you have to release games. You can't just keep them in development for years and years and years unless you are making like the best game of all time.
So we're not saying this won't be, but
it'll be an awesome game. He went on further to explain that they were on a different engine, and then they had to switch to Unreal Engine 4 after they were about 1 year into development. And he went on to explain there was a decision made to change to an external engine, Unreal Engine 4, so he switched over to that. Unfortunately, there was a bit of time that needed to be rewinded and started over, so there was a bit of a setback there, but it was a decision that the company had to make, so it was inevitable. We had a plan of the period that it's going to take for us to create the content at the start of the project, and we laid out after such and such years we would need to add more personal resources. We had submitted it to our headquarters and had it approved, but internal personnel is very limited, and there are various different projects that happen within our company. So unfortunately, timing did not work out, so we had to make do with the timing that was appropriate for the company. The company makes the decision, so unfortunately sometimes it's out of my control. Okay, I can understand that. I know that Square Enix got a license, like an official license to use Unreal Engine 4, and they basically wanted to make all their games with this engine. I believe Final Fantasy 13 infamously took a long time because they basically developed a whole engine just for that. And then when they decided to make it for not just PlayStation 3 but Xbox 360 as well, that took like an additional 2 years of time to get that development done to make the engine work on that console as well, because they tailor-made it for the PlayStation 3. I think it was called the White Engine, and then it got renamed to like Crystal Tools or something like that. And I think they were going to use an updated version of that to make Kingdom Hearts 3, and then the executives just kind of were just like, well, now you have to use Unreal Engine 4. So have fun. And it looks great. Like Unreal Engine 4, I'm constantly being impressed by the different graphical styles you can get out of a singular engine. It's really incredible what you can do with it. So that does stink that they kind of had to knock things back a year. let's see. I think that they're talking more about the trailer here. Oh, and he was asked about DLC. And he's basically saying that it's not set in stone one way or another, but he has asked the team to be ready for DLC. Why does every game have to have DLC nowadays? I know the reason. It comes down to money. But Square Enix is really bad about DLC. I want to say Final Fantasy 15 has I think they have 3 expansions now. And they're probably not cheap. So this probably will not be cheap DLC. And we're seeing more and more DLC that is... You can obviously tell that this would have fit in... That 10 years ago, this would have just been packed into the game as an unlockable. Not as DLC. Some of the Zelda features... or some of the features in Breath of the Wild are like that. It just seems like there's no escaping DLC at this point with games. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the last generation, PlayStation 3, 360 games, those were $60 a piece, right? We didn't see when we moved to PS4 and Xbox One another $10 jump and increase, because that's kind of how it's worked out to be. For PlayStation, it was $40, PlayStation 2 was $50, PlayStation 3 $60. Well, games are still at $60. I would rather, this is going to sound weird, but I honestly would rather the price go up to $70 for every game and have hardly any DLC. What do you think of that? Or would you prefer it to be $60 as kind of like a starter edition of the game?
Well, like I've said about Destiny, when that first got when trailers were coming out for that, me and my friends were getting really hyped because we're into FPS games and we hadn't had one that we all played. So it was me, Wyatt, and another one of our friends. They kept playing Call of Duty. I was out of Call of Duty. I was more Halo than Call of Duty. Mm. Destiny came out and it was
this is done by amazing. The Halo people.
Yeah, it looks amazing. And we bought that and we played it and we loved it for 3 months, and then we were like, oh, there's nothing to do. And then we looked and we're oh. Yeah, there's not a lot. And then I just kind of had it sitting there for a long time, just what am I going to do? Replay the same mission for the 5th time? Go look for more treasure chests that spawn every 10 minutes after you find them? That sounds really boring. And we would do raids once in a while just because it's challenging the more people you have with you. So at least that's a difficulty increase. So that was nice, but I had basically sold the game by the time that DLC had come out. I was well, how much game is this? And I think they've had 3 expansions now.
Yeah.
Which is I'm sure if I were to buy Destiny again, I would probably just buy the everything, which is it's $60 now. And you get everything.
You get a whole game now.
Yeah. So but then some games I feel do DLC right. Super Smash Brothers, I felt their DLC was fine. Because the roster for it already was the largest it's ever been. And they already had a lot of people. And then they started just letting people hey, who do you want? Because they already had a few people planned for DLC. I think Lucas and Roy
and Mewtwo, of course. Mewtwo
came out on release. Yeah. Mm-mm. Yeah, there was a code for it.
Not a release. They were still developing him but honestly, he was the only one that was guaranteed to be released, and they basically were okay, if no one downloads him, we're not going to bother with any other characters. My only issue with Smash Brothers DLC was what they did with Lucas. I don't have a problem with Roy or Mewtwo, even though they were returning characters, because they weren't in Brawl. They were not in the previous Smash Brothers game. So they were a nice addition that no one was expecting. But to have Lucas, who was just in the last game as DLC, I kind of feel like that was a bit... something about that just doesn't sit with me well. But for the most part, I agree with you with that.
And then they even let people, was like, hey, who do you want as DLC? And then I think...
The stages were really reasonably priced, too.
That's
$2 for a stage?
That's one thing I didn't like. Because I think there were some characters that you couldn't buy without the stage. I think, like, Cloud, right. You had to buy him and the stage.
And Ryu. And
Bayonetta.
Bayonetta were the three.
Which was dumb. I didn't care about the stages, because the stages were just like... I play on Omega almost all the time, so I don't care. Because, honestly, if your stage has a hazard, which Final Fantasy stage is dumb, okay? If you can just, like, get materia, it's easily dodged, but it's annoyance. When I want to just, like, not fight anyone, and I just need to run away because
some of them are easy to dodge.
Some of them, yeah. But when the map is my biggest enemy, that's when the game's not fun.
Well, and let's say if you remove that from that level, like let's say if you're doing an 8-player Smash on it where the hazards are all disabled for everything, well then you just have a nice looking version of Battlefield in Midgar.
It's just Omega, or it's
Battlefield.
It's Battlefield,
yeah.
With Final Fantasy VII skin.
I see why they did that though, because it would have been really weird if you had the stage but not the character.
Why need the stage at all?
Well,
like,
I think
Ryu's was pretty unique.
I didn't like Ryu's. I felt like that was very uninspired for platforms. No other Smash Brothers stages like that. But
I thought it was fun that it wasn't boring. Just like, hey, I've got this big old slab of land. Guess what? We got 2 more right above it. We're gonna go. You know what? I'll sweeten the deal even more. Put 1 more at the top, make a nice little pyramid.
But I think what they should have done is they should have had, like, you can either get the character for $4 or spend $6 and get both. Like, I think that would have been fine. But they did have it so that you had to get the stage with the character,
which I felt like was dumb. But other than that, I felt like the DLC was pretty okay for that game. And there have been other games where, like, the DLC has been like, oh yeah, this is just like, woo, it's extra content. It's like, I didn't need this in the game, but it's fun to have it. Because right. Basically what DLC is.
And it used to be that they would not charge that much for DLC.
I think it used to be like, sometimes it would be like maybe $10.
For like all of the DLC.
Yeah.
Now it's like if you want all the DLC, you're spending over $100 for the game. And for fighting games, like, a lot of people have a lot of bad... they have a bad feeling that the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is going to have, like, a whole, like, bunch of characters that are going to be DLC only.
Probably.
That's going to be not cool at all.
And then, like, Street Fighter V, when it was like, hey, story mode's coming out, it's DLC. It's like, how about no?
But it was free.
Make it with the game.
They should have done that. But I can't get too mad about that because it was technically free.
I can get pretty mad because it took them a long time. And it didn't...
They were trying to get the game out in time for EVO. That's what it came down to.
That's even worse. That's like Super Smash Bros. Brawl being like, oh, we threw tripping in there because we thought it would be fun. We wanted to get it in before EVO. And be like, why? Why? Yeah. The only good thing about Brawl is that we got Project M.
What would you think the DLC would even look like in Kingdom Hearts 3?
Worlds. I feel like it'd be like, you know, you want some throwback worlds? Bam. You got like...
Oh, if they're throwback worlds, I will probably not bother.
Well, I'm sure they'll also be like, hey...
If you make a Wreck-It Ralph world as DLC only, Tetsuya Nomura, so help me. Let me never meet you. And then you're like, no, the Square Enix executives made you do it. I'm like, let's see the Square Enix executives make a game without their best designer. I don't know what happens to him after that.
Where are your executives now?
You have failed the gaming community.
And then you stab him in the chest.
Dun, 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 dun. So let me get on further about... Okay, this is his worst comment. Let me just skip ahead a little bit. Where does he say it? Oh. The reason why this makes me so mad is because this is an old comment from last generation about why it takes Square Enix so long to make games. Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be our first full HD game in our current console generation. I guess he's only talking about Kingdom Hearts. He's not counting Final Fantasy 15 or that Final Fantasy Type 0 game or anything like that. It does involve a lot of bandwidth and resources in order to create in full HD, so our directive was to have as many elements as possible of gameplay included in one single world rather than having multiple different little worlds with few elements. We wanted to pack in as many gameplay elements and fun into a single world, blah, blah, blah. So basically, he's giving the same dumb excuse that they gave in 2009 or whatever when Final Fantasy XIII was about to come out, and everyone was like, hey man, it's been 4 or 5 years since you've had a Final Fantasy game come out. What's taking so long? Oh, it takes a long time to make a game in HD. Really? Nintendo seems to have it down pat now. Breath of the Wild, they made that game in like 4 years. In fact, it could have come out a year earlier, but they held on to it for the Switch. Super Mario Odyssey, that's probably just been in development for as long as Super Mario Galaxy 2 has been out. So I don't want to hear...
That's a fairly long time.
It's not as long as Kingdom Hearts 3.
No. I feel like when they heard him when he heard people complaining about Final Fantasy 13, he was like, "You don't like waiting? All right." Final Fantasy 15 doesn't come out until 2016. Mark it down. We'll finish the game in 3 years. Don't you release it
when we finish it.
Don't you release it. You know what? Everyone gets a 2-year paid vacation.
No, you can't complain about making games in HD anymore. It's 2017. We've been doing this for over 10 years.
It's the standard. Even our pixelated games are in HD.
Exactly. Like, Unreal Engine 4, that engine has been out for about 5 years now.
Granted, there is a difference between, creating Shovel Knight and creating Final Fantasy 15.
Absolutely. But you can't blame it on HD. You just can't. That is such a cop-out excuse and reason, especially since it didn't even make sense, I don't know how many years ago, 8 years ago with Final Fantasy 13? No. You don't get to make that. No developer nowadays complains about, oh gosh, developing in HD is so hard. Just shut up. I don't want to hear that. If literally that is your reason, do not tell me your reason why Kingdom Hearts 3 took so long. Just say, we had to switch engines and leave it at that. I never want to hear that excuse again. Not ever. So yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3. Coming out next year. Can't wait.